When I was a little kid, um, I had an aunt, Sheila, and she was this blonde chick. She was she was all right. She played some card games with me. I remember a few times. Um, uh, if I remember correctly, I did get questioned by her over something weird that I did whenever I was a kid. I think it was pictures that I drew when I was little. She had to sit down and, question me, and she actually did a pretty good job of questioning me, which I think bothered my uncle at the time. I think it bothered him so much that she was such a good that she was so caring, and that she was someone who was intelligent and could question and get to the bottom of things. I think that it actually kind of concerned him back then, or that's how I felt as a kid. That was how I saw things. And then, so it would be that my aunt Sheila would commit suicide, and then her sister Teresa would also commit suicide, and then their brother, I don't know what his name was, but he would also commit suicide, which is kind of weird. But like, we were all told that Sheila was out on the porch with some memory books, some photo albums or something like that, and a firearm, and my little baby cousin when she was only like 2 or 3, and that the kids were watching from the trailer across from theirs, that they were watching through the window and saw it all and everything, and they would say that Sheila was on the porch with the baby and with these photo albums, and that she was having some kind of nervous breakdown or whatever, and that she uh that the gun went off, and that it was aimed, um you know that it was an abdominal wound, and that it would strike the trailer behind her or something like that, the bullet. And like, the whole story would almost add up, like, just as you heard it, like over the phone, or as it was being relayed to you by whatever family members or whatever. But whenever I was actually there in front of the trailer, and my uncle was actually like trying to show my dad how it all happened. Um, my uncle, for some reason, grabbed me, and I was only like 7 years old, and he like brought me over to the talk between he and my dad, and he was like getting a good he acted like he was like really getting a good feel for me, you know what I mean? My shoulders and my size and stuff like that. And he was like, "Oh, weird." He was like, "Oh, this is weird. You're like about the same size as she was, maybe just a little bit smaller and stuff." And I remember him like almost being like almost enjoying the fact that I was the same size as his wife or whatever, or something like that. It was pretty bizarre. And um he held me in front of him, and he took his hand just like this, almost just like he was the one holding the gun, and he pressed it up against my stomach, and he turned me around in such a way, and then he showed my dad behind me where the bullet would have gone through the trailer, which I thought was actually pretty high. I thought that it was weird that the bullet went, you know what I mean, that the hole ended up was aimed so high up, because he he would actually like, and I don't know if he got the bullet out or not. Like, I think that, and that was another thing, is that he said that he was trying to get the bullet out, or had tried to find it to get it out or something like that. Um, but just the way that he held on to me and held his hand up against, my abdomen, as he said that it was her abdomen. And because the original story was that she was sitting on the porch with the kid, and then, like, if you would think of the trajectory of the bullet, like, if she would have been sitting on the porch and that was where the bullet was, that's where the bullet hole was, and you're talking about that if it went into the trailer behind her, it sure wasn't the front door where she had been sitting on the front porch. That would make it land, 8 feet over at the very top of the trailer, which is odd. And like, he's like telling my dad about this, and my dad's like, you know what I mean? And my dad's starting to be like, oh, this is weird. You know what I mean? Even they're both of the weirdos are both like, yeah, I know this is weird. You know what I mean? They're like, we know this is weird. I don't know. Oh, thanks for being our and they thanked me for being their whatchamacallit, their I don't know, their demonstration doll. I was the demonstration doll at 7 years old. And, there was blood on the steps, on the wooden steps leading up to their Koki trailer or whatever happened there. I had to step over that poor, and she was beautiful. I mean, she was a beautiful woman. She was only 19 years old. She was from Amarillo, Texas. I'm pretty sure she had those cute little vampire teeth and stuff like that, dude. She, she could have been anybody's daughter from Amarillo, Texas, that was dragged to a trailer park in Denver, Colorado, where, everybody just did too much shit, you know what I mean, all of a sudden. And, people might have got a little bit carried away in their use, is what is from the sound of it. And that's the same things that basically I heard happening, that the same things that basically I saw happening to the women around me and experienced in my life, as far as like people trying to sabotage things, and lots of use and lots of chaotic energy, and that sort of thing. That sounds like that's what happened to Sheila. But like, Sheila, she hadn't been like away from Amarillo for that long. You know what I mean? I guess, like, I think that they had a life in Amarillo. I think that they either lived on Tyler or Taylor Street. I can't remember. Um, like downtown Amarillo. Um, and hang on a minute. Like, honestly, if the chick hadn't taken the time to like sit down with me, like, and there was a few times she sat down with me that she looked at me real serious, and she gave me real serious vibes and stuff like that. And she was like sending me vibes. It was like she was trying to like talk to me without saying anything out loud. Like, people had told her something about me, and maybe she thought that she could get a message across to me without saying anything. So she came and she like started playing these cards with me, right? And she was like playing Go Fish. She was playing all these card games with me and like memory and stuff like that. But while she was doing it, like, I remember my uncle kept like coming around the corner and like watching her, like watching real closely to see if she was like talking about anything, or if we were talking about anything or whatever. I do remember that. And that it almost seemed like she was real careful not to say anything, but that it felt like she was sending like messages, like, not that I could see, or not that she was signaling or anything. It was like, you could feel it just like it was almost like I could just feel it coming out of her. It was I could feel like that she was scared. Um, I felt like that she was worried that no one was going to be able to speak up for her if anything happened to her, and different things like that. It was pretty weird, dude. And if it weren't for her coming and sitting down and playing some card games with me a few times, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you, like, she wouldn't have formed any sort of bond with me for me to understand that she was a real person, you know what I mean? And um, that she might not have deserved anybody to do anything foul to her or whatever. And so that was a pretty weird experience. I was upset that me and all the kids and the whole family, that my uncle invited us right over to his trailer, knowing that, that everything was stained like that, and that had just happened, and that he was going to carry on and act like it was all just like something that she did by herself. I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like as a kid that it was sad, and that, like, obviously my dad would never tell on his own brother for anything like that or question his own brother. Of course, my dad was going to love his own brother and side with him, and you know what I mean, not want anything bad to happen to him no matter what he did. And nobody else was really part of the conversation. We were the only ones who heard um, what my uncle said. So within a pretty short time frame, as a little kid, I heard two different stories. I heard one story, and then I walked up on a totally different story. And I was told that they life flighted her and that she was still alive when she made it to the hospital. I heard that they could have potentially saved her life, but either chose not to and used her, like divided her up, if you know what I'm talking about, or that she had survived somehow, and I don't know, but somehow she survived, and they ended up not saving her or whatever. Which I have no idea whether there was a team of people who actually fought to save her life that day or night. So I wasn't there, so I can't say. I don't know whether or not they had, secretly gotten life insurance policies on her the way that I heard that they've done with me. I've heard that they have a false conservatorship, and throughout my life have had false conservatorships, a fraudulent guardianship over me, and that they were collecting social security checks behind my back and annuity checks, had me even married on paper falsely, and things of that nature. But with Sheila, they wouldn't have had to worry about any false marriages because they were really married, of course. Um, so, I don't know what all happened there. I know that it was very sad. I know that I feel like that afterwards, my uncle, he wasn't as patient and sensitive and humble or whatever as you would think that a person would be after they lost their wife. And he was even quite possessive over their daughter, like, and became really weird over, like, because it would seem that she would want to hang out more with, like, as we came into the picture, and it was almost like we were getting them and bringing them back to Texas back then, and we did, at least right after that happened, especially. And I did notice that he was really weird and possessive and barky. and very hostile and aggressive. And it was just like, it was really sad for all of us kids. And I do remember seeing the little girl, like Alex, whenever she was really little like that, like she would cry over how he, that he would just act like a demon and stuff. And I'm not going to throw in the weirdest part of that story because that part actually is not really my place to tell. But I will probably make an entire video based on that as far as my life is concerned. But I'm not going to speak up for anybody else. I'm not going to, that's part of their story, I guess, as far as that kind of thing is concerned. All right. And I can remember being like, in their bathroom whenever I was little, like, and like looking around in there and just like seeing her stuff in there and just feeling what things were like, was like what it was like for her, and just the feeling of like the fact that her energy was still there. It was like she wasn't really gone yet. And I felt like her spirit at the time would lead me to show me different things at the time, and that I can't entirely share. But it was disturbing, and at least I can't publicly. I know that she used to work at Red Lobster in Amarillo, Texas, and I think that she got in trouble. Not to try to make her sound or look bad, it's just giving you guys it's identifying markers, and it's honesty, you know what I mean? Because as much as we've used drugs as a way to mark somebody as one of the bad guys, or somebody who needs help or whatever, it could also signify that that person has been targeted in some way. The fact that 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 substances were moved into that person's life in the first place, when they may not have been a part of their life for their entire life until then, or something. You know what I mean? It takes all kinds. All right, so that was all weird, and my uncle would be really weird over the death of my Aunt Sheila for a long time, and he would use it to just be weird and just act weird, and to be in just a weird depression for a long time, and to treat people like trash, um and and he would bring it up. He would compare his other wife with the wife that what I mean, that passed away, telling her that he would never love her as much as he loved that one wife who he would claim shot herself, even though he took me out in the yard and put his hand on my abdomen, you know what I mean, just like a gun, and aimed it up at the trailer, turned me around, and what I mean, shot through me with his invisible gun, and showed us all, like, where the bullet went in and everything, which was like a completely different story than what everybody was told until we got to the trailer after she'd passed away in the hospital, and after a whole reports had been made and it was all over with. Then he showed my dad basically and I how it really happened. Like, okay, and they ended up filing out of that trailer park in Denver, Colorado, where apparently they tried to say that there were kids there. I don't know if anybody knows a set of, they would definitely be adults now, but if you guys lived in a trailer park in Denver, Colorado, where you watched a fight out in the front yard, or a woman sitting on the porch with her kid and some pictures who hurt herself, or if you saw a man and a woman struggling in the yard and a gun went off. I mean, were there kids watching through a back window in a trailer? Did that even happen? Or was that something that my uncle made up? I have no idea. Did she go unconscious for a second and they asked my uncle what he wanted done and he tell them not to say? I have no idea what happened there. They paid for her funeral. It was a beautiful funeral. She had a beautiful white casket. It was all quite disturbing. The services were held at, I think that I'm allowed to say where somebody's services were held, right? It was Covenant of Joy Christian Church there in Amarillo, Texas. I'm allowed to say that because people post when obituaries and services and marriages and funerals and all that are held. And it's all posted on, that information would have also been posted on all of the pamphlets that we all got. And there was like at least 200 people at that funeral. It was a pretty big funeral. And their little girl was like, my mommy's in that casket and stuff when everything was all silent. It was pretty messed up. But Danny, that's my uncle's name. He did act really weird the whole time. He just acted really dirty. Like he just had this dirtiness all over him. Like, I don't know. I just remember him back then, like as being like what I feel like is like this demonic dirty. Like there was just dirt and oil and dirty all over him and that he just couldn't even wash it off. Like somebody who takes baths all the time but never takes a shower or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that kind of, like a grunge, like an old 90s grunge, that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And it was the 90s technically, so that might kind of be a little bit what it was. But nowadays I would look back and identify it as like my discerning abilities would go off and be like, oh, it's a little bit demonic-y. There's a little bit dirty, demon-y yuckiness. All right, so then, and Sheila had another brother and sister. I'm not sure if she had other siblings aside from these. But I do know that Teresa, I met a couple times. And I remember Teresa saying, we were running around in a truck and I was talking about somebody. I can't remember who I was talking about. And she said, now, she was like, I can't believe you were talking about people like that. She was like, and this taught me a lesson, right? About talking about people. She's like, how do I know that as soon as I leave, you're not going to turn around and be talking about me and stuff, She was really sweet. It was really hot in the summertime and I was talking about how hot it was. And she was like a cute little chick. She wasn't really that much bigger than me either. And I would have been probably only like 5 or 6 years old when I met her, or not 5 or 6. I'm probably 6 or 7, But I remember her being like, oh, I'd rather be too hot than too cold, I guess, or whatever. But she seemed like a very thoughtful, like, she almost had this magician nature to be able to twist little things that was said around her around, and she was like kind of funny. She was pretty young, I guess, whenever I was meeting her. I guess she was only 15 or 16 years old when I met her, which I didn't know. Like, whenever I was a little kid, I thought she was an adult, but she wasn't yet. Well, apparently she was also, I guess it was set up for her to look like a suicide. And that's pretty hardcore to me. They said that she left a journal behind with entries saying that she was going to and all that, but like I'm not real sure about that. And then but I was a kid, so there was no way for me to go out, you know what I mean? And be like, Harriet the Spy and do detective work and stuff, right? And like the only work I could do would be to ask about it as a little kid. All right. And then the last part of this is pretty gruesome, which is how her brother apparently passed away. And they tried to say that her brother uh, basically fed himself gasoline intravenously. Um, and that was how he opted out. And that sounds absolutely terrible. Like, I'm not sure that anyone would even do something like that. I'm not sure that anybody would do something like that to themselves. So I have a difficult time accepting that he was the one who did that to himself, and that, he hadn't instead been sitting with one of the, girls who he might have trusted, who he might have, you know what I mean, been used to doing stuff with, and that, it was filled up with something that was a certain color, and that was all that she wrote, you know what I mean, which is really sick to think about. Um, but all three of those siblings, I guess I'm speaking up for now that I feel like that all three of those are suspicious deaths. Um, and uh, that because I feel like they are, related to my family being, secretly, I guess, psychopaths and red rummers, um, that I feel compelled to speak up about them too, for sure. Um, so it'd be Sheila, Teresa, and like I said, I don't know what the brother's name was, but they all, just like domino effect, one right after the other, were taken out. And two, I believe, were made to seem like um, self-inflicted gunshot wounds, and the last was made to seem like a really gruesome self-inflicted, they're trying to say, you know gasoline poisoning, which sounds really sick and demented. Like, why, just of all the things that uh I feel that aunt's presence, Sheila's presence, was around more and was a heavy presence when I was a little kid. And that then again, as I was being chased across the country by my family and things were really bad, um, and I needed help really bad, uh, I felt, was one of like the spiritual forces who came through, who was like, hey, remember me? They did the same thing to me, kind of, is what I feel like she was trying to tell me. And I got on Facebook and I just wrote the entire story out as well as I could, because I was being like chased so badly every single day that it was anything that I could. I thought that, like, if I just, you know, said as much as I could on the internet, that I would eventually get attention and that I would eventually be rescued. But it wasn't true. And I just, until I was blue in the face, wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote on Facebook and made reports left and right and did as much as I could and wrote as much as I could in public and just told everybody what was going on. And it didn't change a thing. It didn't change anything. The only thing that happened was, that people used what I wrote, online, to have judgments made about me behind my back in courts, which is the whole reason why they would get on my page and be like, hey, you're such a good writer. You're so great. You sound just like, oh, they would encourage me and tell me to write more and shit. And I'd be like, I would be like, what are they doing with this? Like, what are they going to do with this? Like, and I would wonder, I was like, oh God, they're just telling me to write more because they're going to use it against me somehow. But they would try to pump me up and tell me that I wrote just like Hunter S. Thompson and stuff, which was a really big deal to me because at the time, whenever I was a kid, Hunter S. Thompson was, um, excuse me, Hunter S. Thompson was my he was an inspiration to me, and I wanted to meet him really badly. And it was actually my plan. It was my plan when I turned 18 years old to go to Hunter S. Thompson's house whenever I got out of being locked up. And as soon as I was released from kiddie jail, as soon as I was released from Boys Town, I found out that Hunter S. Thompson had committed suicide as well, or so they made it seem. If he had just waited a little bit longer, I would have shown up, and I'm not sure if it would have made any difference. But he was at least one celebrity who made it clear that anybody could show up on his porch, and that his arms and that his arms were wide open for anybody who wanted to show up, that he was down for company, and he let everybody know that. And so I was just waiting the whole time I was locked up to be released so that I could go chill with Hunter S. Thompson, and that was the only thing that I really cared about as I was going to be exiting Boys and Girls Town in Nebraska, actually, which was where I was held up at the time. Sheila's death was absolutely tragic. If I know that some of you might have heard me rave about how beautiful Natalie was in one video. Well, that's kind of how this was. Like, my Aunt Sheila was bomb, dude. She was this smoking hot, fiery blonde pistol, just smoking hot. Like, I mean, I know I was only like 5, 6, 7 years old, and I shouldn't have been talking about my aunt like that, but even a child was able to look at this woman and see that she was a smoking hot enchilada. You know what I mean? She was smoking fine. I can't even lie. Like, there were only a few pictures of her that I think were even around, which I'm really surprised by, because I feel like she was kind of like a supermodel in a way. I don't know if you guys know who oh god, his name is Paulie. His name is Paulie. He's the gold dude. Is it Pioneer Paulie? I don't know, but he's got these teeth, dude, these vampire teeth, and he's just like known for those teeth. Like, if it was her at 19 years old in this generation today, she would be known for being a vampire. She would, like, straight up, she would be one of the vampire people out here, and that would be what she would be known for. It's super weird. But anyways, it was a super beautiful feature for her, to be a blonde vampire. Like, she was always laughing. She, for the most part, acted like she was having a good time. There was just a little bit of weirdness that would happen here and there, and it would sound like they were fighting, or, it would seem like she was scared, or that she would get a little bit more withdrawn, or that you would see the laughter kind of fade and things get a little bit more serious. And anyway, but for the most part, that was a really beautiful chick. It's a shame that she was taken out that early and that she lost her life that early. Like, 19 is a pretty early age to go. 16 or 17, whenever her sister went out, like, that's a pretty early age to go. Like, you guys couldn't extend your lives a little bit longer. Anyways, I'm not sure. It doesn't really seem to me like that the one was a suicide. So, and again, I'm sorry if I'm supposed to say suicide instead of, the other word on here. I'm sure I say all kinds of words wrong. I'm actually probably going to take my donations thing down, and I am not going to expect any monetary gain from this, which is just fine. Because it's just a simple fact that the information, I feel like it actually does need to get out. And my life has been compromised in so many different ways, and I'm still enslaved to this day over things that I've spoken up about in writing. And I guess because I wasn't loud enough with what I wrote, that all of that has just been sealed in vaults, for no one to see and no one to know about. So this is me coming out and letting people know, so many of the things that have been locked up into vaults that people want to act like are top secret or whatever, that nobody can know about while they continue to control my life. People like my uncle, people like the person who actually did all this, still controlling people and calling shots. We would order pizza sometimes. It was kind of a big family, everybody together, especially after, moms got, 86 and things like that. And we all, huddled together in the same house and stuff. The pizza man would come to the door and knock, and my little cousin would answer the door, and he'd be like, "Where's your mommy, sweetheart?" And she'd be like, "She's dead." She'd be like, "Yeah, my mommy's dead." Um, so that was really weird and harsh, and it would just like reopen wounds for everybody. There would be like members of the household crying and stuff like that, trying to keep it on the down low. And like we got used to her being like, "My mommy's dead," to the point that we just stopped letting her answer the door, of course, which we should have done from the very get. But and then there was something weird that went on with jewelry, with the kid trying to have access to her mother's photos, her mother's jewelry, her mother's clothing, her mother's things, as she was getting older. And that as she would try to gain access to those items, she would get in trouble and she would be punished, which I also thought was a little bit weird and was taking things a little bit overboard. And then I watched the daughter be controlled in quite the same way and isolated, and that was kind of crappy. And I heard that the parents of their families, of Sheila's family, I heard that her parents did. I heard that they did accuse my uncle and that they were suspicious, but I didn't really hear that much about it afterwards. Like, because I wrote about that, like, it's bordering on 2 years ago when I would have written about that online. When I would have written everything that you guys just heard me say and then some for the public online. So like I guess people weren't willing to if I wasn't loud enough about it, and if I, didn't make a video about it, or if I didn't come right out yelling about it, that they just weren't ever going to do anything about it. Excuse me, sorry. And that's how basically all of these situations have been. And then, over the course of time, I started to, it took me just within the last few years to really put together, all of these different weird instances that it doesn't seem like ever that there was any conclusion for or closure for, or that people were unsatisfied with whatever the conclusions were for them, or that it seemed like there was foul play but no one got in trouble, or that like no one was passionate enough about anyone's life to actually go after anyone for homicide anymore. That it basically, the law is only used for whatever fits into their own personal purposes, that it isn't all just cut and dry and black and white. If if they can get something better out of the deal than just putting someone in jail and, having a crime solved, then apparently that's the avenue that some of them will take instead, which sucks. And I'm going to go ahead and throw a fourth person into this deal, into this explanation or whatever. And this person, I'm just throwing him in here and not giving him his own personal space, simply because he's a pervert. But because he is a pervert who they want to say 86'd himself, the same way that they say that these other three people 86 themselves, I'm going to throw him into this mix because it is a pattern. It is part of the pattern. Now, I don't want for him, his disgusting legacy or questionable legacy to be mixed with these people's legacy. But for Jim Bob, I'm not sure if he was a perv or not. But what I heard was that my Uncle Danny made Jim Bob commit suicide and threatened Jim Bob that if he didn't do it, that he would do it to him or something like that. And that they were out in the desert and that he was able to get Jim Bob to do himself in, and that way Danny didn't have to take the blame for it. And I think that whether you do somebody in or you tell them, hey, if you don't do yourself in, I'm going to do you in, and you get them to do themselves in, that's kind of the same thing as doing them in. You see what I mean? I'm sure you're picking up what I'm putting down. So I know that I was alone with Jim Bob as a kid several times. Jim Bob never reached over at me. He might have breathed really heavy at different times. I know that some perverts are extra attracted to little kids instead of older kids. So that could have been an issue. I did hear from I did hear from some of the other little girls in my family when they were more adult age that Jim Bob really was a pervert. So I'm going to trust what they said over what my uncle or any of the other adults in my family would have said at the time. I'm going to go ahead and trust that he probably was a pervert. He probably was doing and showing the kids messed up things. And that my uncle, whenever he found out about it, did make him do himself in. However, I feel that after discovering my family's involvement in these different crime rings, that I feel that Danny more so made Jim Bob do that because Jim Bob otherwise would have drawn too much attention to them all, had already drawn too much attention to them all, and was going to bust the whole situation and could bust everybody that they were associated and affiliated with. Which whenever I was a kid, I never would have thought in a million years that that was the case. Like, I actually back then thought that my uncle was a good dude and that he was genuinely trying to protect the kids. And come to find out, he was just trying to protect the crime ring, and Jim Bob had messed up and had done some things to where the kids actually had complaints, whereas the adults in my family weren't used to doing it that way. They were used to making sure that the kids were asleep before they started to do weird things, or that the kids didn't entirely know that they were being watched while they were exposed to certain things and stuff like that. Like, they had weird ways of doing it on the down low or from the background to where they thought that they could never be detected, even by the kids. And Jim Bob had messed that whole process up and had made it to where now the girls did have a complaint, and now the kids did have a complaint, um, which went against the entire system and the entire process, because we weren't technically allowed to have any physical evidence or to have any, real memories that we could bring up and call upon that anything was happening to us. We were just supposed to just know that it was happening and not be able to do anything about it, and never be able to speak up for ourselves or gather evidence ourselves or anything like that. It's been a pretty horrific ride. So, or ordeal, I should say. So anyways, those are 4 more questionable fatalities that I would like to remind everyone of, and to start the conversation about these people who I guess nobody's been allowed to talk about since it happened, which has been a really long time. Like, I'm talking about stuff that happened back in the 90s. So I would hope that no one is going to tell me that I can't talk about it now. It's weird that you guys are allowed to talk about whatever nonsense you want, but that I'm not allowed to get on here and talk. You know what I mean? Hopefully I'm allowed to get on here and talk about something real. And, because this kind of thing could have happened to any of us. This kind of thing could happen to anybody's 19-year-old who's, from anywhere. You know what I mean? It's absolutely, this could happen to any of our kids. This is all really absurd, and I would like to point it out, and all over again, and to allow this to be my testimony a little bit, as to what happened to my Aunt Sheila, because that was a really weird incident that did traumatize me, all of that going on. And then as an adult, I've had to deal with a really aggro, hostile, cruel uncle, who has, and family members who have done a number to my life and absolutely destroyed my life, and have held such a grip and control over my life that I could hardly even live it. And, and they were also part of a MDK campaign against me. And like I said, have life insurance policies open on me and all kinds of stuff. So, anyway, this was about Sheila Marie Cross, her sister Teresa. I don't know what their brother's name, I'm sorry. And the chomo who messed with her kid after she was taken out of the picture, and his name was Jim Bob. All right. Thanks and God bless.